I was caught a bit off guard yesterday. Chinta kidnapped me to come and give you a talk. So, I mean, I don't usually prepare too much anything anyways, but one thing I was thinking, if I'm going to give a talk during the Rains Retreat this year, I will talk about the Anatalakkhana Sutta. It's a beautiful sutta, translated as the characteristic on non-self sometimes. I already gave the speech to the citizen group, so if anybody there listened to it before, hopefully there wouldn't be that much repetition. But anyway, so a lot of you haven't heard it. So this sutta is the second sutta which Buddha spoke. The first one is obviously rolling the wheel of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. A lot of you know, but so this was the second sutta that the Buddha spoke. And this, the second sutta, the characteristic of non-self, is the sutta where Buddha really outlined the where most humans think self exists. He could have outlined the teaching different ways, perhaps. There could be different ways of categorizing human. This is not like it's not like there's only one way of saying this is what constitutes as a human. And so, but he picked up one of those things where he really thought we exist. So if you think for your own life, where do you think you exist? If you really contemplate a little bit, every morning when you look into the mirror, when you go and brush your teeth, where do you exist? You exist on those pimples you don't wish you weren't in your face, or on your new creases on your, next to your eyes and all that. That's where you exist, and you exist on we reflect ourselves. A lot of this, what we reflect ourselves, is from the body, and mainly from the face, because this is who we are. We know we're not our face, but we associate a lot of ourselves with that. Even though, it's an interesting thing. As a monk, quite a lot of monasteries, we don't have mirrors. That lot of mirrors. There's even sometimes in the toilets we don't have mirrors, because as a monk, one of the rules is that you're not supposed to what's the rule? No, it's not vanity. You're not supposed to look yourself in the mirror by this. I can't remember the rule now exactly how it goes, but just observe yourself in the mirror and just say how good I look. That's one of the rules. But so we can use mirrors when you're shaving and stuff. You still have the mirrors in. But quite often when you spend a long time in the monastery, and especially if you don't have a lot of mirrors, you sort of forget that aspect of yourself. Sometimes you have been in Bodhinyana for a long time, and people said, "Oh, you haven't shaved for a while." It's like, "Oh, yeah, I haven't even." Yes, because you don't see your own face. Or if you don't touch your face, you forgot I didn't shave. So body itself, body is the number one. So let me go a little bit back. So the Buddha, with the characteristics, Buddha said we have 5 khandhas. That's the Pali word. And so 5, let's say, sometimes they say constituents, but 5 ways to characterize human, where we think self exists. And number 1 is body. I mean, it's not just the face, obviously, but the body itself, we think, this is me, this is who I am. And if you look at the body, does the body belong to you? There's a strong idea that it belongs to you. You are sort of annoyed with your body quite often, or you enjoy when it feels good in your body. You enjoy it. But if things don't go according your wishes, let's say the body gets sick, for example, it hurts somewhere. You try to make it go away because you think you can do something about it. But that's why we when I was going to teach this sutta for the citizen group, they said, well, how do you translate this anatta, non-self? Is it non-self, no self, not self? It doesn't make that much difference, but quite often the good translation perhaps would be non-self, N-O-N, non-self, instead of not self or no self. Non-self is because in this sutta, this particular sutta, we talk about things which belong to you, quite often these things. So it's non-belonging to me. So the body doesn't belong to you. You sort of understand it, but we forget. It hasn't really sink in. And the Buddha gave the example comes there that in the sutta later on, that if your body is sick, can you say, I don't want my body to be sick? No, you cannot do that. You cannot just wish yourself healthy. It just doesn't work that way. The body gets sick, and it's according to nature. It's nature, biology, whatever we call it these days. And sometimes you hear people say things like, I got sick because it's my karma. And the Buddha said, no, that's not your karma. It could be that there's partly karma is somewhere there. But the Buddha said you can get sick because of the nature. So it's just a human body gets sick. So so number one. So we're talking about the khandhas. So number one, body. That's where we really quite often we think self is there. Number two, feeling, Vedana. And now it's unfortunate translation Vedana to translate as a feeling. You feel angry, you feel sad. Those are characteristics of the Vedana. Vedana, the feeling really means suffering, happiness or non-suffering, and somewhere between you, whether you don't really know how to categorize. Vedana doesn't it doesn't mean feelings as what we use it in English, but we don't have really any better way of translating it into English. So we have body, and now number two now is Vedana, feelings, suffering, non-suffering, or sort of between. And that goes anywhere. So if you see something which you don't like, that is suffering, right? So if you hear something like the children are playing they're too loud, then you pay attention to that, and you find maybe difficult to listen to me. There's the suffering there. You can see there's perhaps irritation coming, or you feel happy that we have children. Then there's happiness arising, or you don't even notice that children are there. Then you sort of it's between. So it's everywhere. So all your five senses, all your mind sense as well. So we have 6 senses in Buddhism. So everywhere there, whether it's suffering, non-suffering, or somewhere between. So we're now number 2. That's how we categorize. We think there's self somewhere there. The suffering, we are trying to avoid suffering. We try to hold on to the, when something is, you like something, you try to hold on to that. Whether it's bodily feelings, mental feelings, whatever it is, Ajahn Brahm has this simile of driverless bus, and the simile for that, the driverless bus, is that you're sitting in a bus and you see the scenery, and you enjoy something, and you said, you wish the driver would slow down. Something beautiful, fields now. We see these flowers are coming here in Australia. Spring is coming, and you wish the driver would slow down. You can enjoy the scenery, and you talk to your friends, and everything is going well as you wish, and you wish that would last longer in your life. And then you go to an ugly dump side, and you wish the driver was just like speed. Let's just move from here. I don't want to see these things. You just we're wishing these things in life, but again, there's not much we can do about it. And then the simile with the driverless bus is, with Ajahn Brahm's simile, is that, and then after jhana, after deep meditation, that is actually the point when you can go to the driver and see who's driving the bus. and you realize there's nobody there. So that's the simile for anatta. And then you can just sort of, there's nobody driving this bus. It's just going through the route of the life according to your karma. And you just sort of have to, you just enjoy the ride. There's not much you can do about it. But if you really are getting angry about the things you don't like in life and try to hold on to the pleasures in life, you're just accumulating a lot of suffering. The more you hold into this. So that's why these deep meditations are so important. So number 2 now, this might take long. Number 2 now. Okay. So then we go to number 3, where we think where we exist, and that's perception, sanya. When we perceive something, again, it goes with all the senses. Buddhism, we have 6 senses. We perceive through something with your mind, whether it's thoughts or you feel the suffering or the happiness, all those things. They sort of merge a lot of those things together. So there's not like this, none of these are very strict categories. They sort of blend into each other. Sometimes they bleed into overlap each other and all that. So perceptions are something, you perceive something, otherwise it doesn't exist. And we think we are in that perception. Whether it doesn't mean perceiving as seeing, it means also with all the other senses and with the mind sense as well. You perceive something, and I exist because of that. If you don't perceive anything, you would sort of realize if you were somewhere floating up in the air and it was completely darkness and there's no sound, nothing, would self exist? How long would it exist if there was no sensory experiences coming to you to be perceived? And sometimes people, there's questions like, if somebody's in coma, are they there? And there's a period where people in coma, they are actually there. So they cannot see you, but they say, these people are almost like some people who come back from there. They say that they heard the others. They sensed that they were there. And that's why they say it's important that you actually, if somebody's in coma, you go and touch them, talk to them like they're there. And that keeps them, if they want to hold on and they are hoping that the body will come back, the mind will start working normally and the body come back, then you keep touching and talking to them normally. It's almost like a dream state. And the same with dreaming. There is your dream state, you are always there. You don't disappear on your sleep. That's why we can wake up, and that's why we can still sort of perceive certain things even when you're sleeping. There is still a little bit of sense there, even though your body is paralyzed and you don't hear and see that well at that point, but still it's there. So perception. Now number 3. Number 4 is really a big one. That's the Pali word is sankhara. There's a little bit different translations in sankhara. Sankhara sometimes is, Bhikkhu Bodhi translates as volition. Ajahn Sarno says, what did it say? Choices. Bhante Sujato in Sutta Central, he uses choices. Ajahn Brahm likes to use word just will. Choices and will, volition, they're all same aspects of that same thing. And this is really where Ajahn Brahm says that this is really where we think we exist. You choose something. We always, whatever it is, again, it goes back to bleeds into the different categories. It bleeds into that we try to avoid suffering or keep on to the happinesses, all that in lives. Those are, you choose those things. You think you choose. Whatever, any kind of will you have is, you think really deep inside, that's where self is. And then the last one, number 5, consciousness, vijnana. Traditionally, all the other religions say, okay, they would say the same. There is no, body is not self, even though there is perhaps some of the other religions say that, like you could what's the word, resurrected? I think that's the English word. I don't know what they really mean by that. Like there's this mind-made body which just comes up from the grave and then you float into it. And I guess it looks like when you were in your 20s and you meet your parents and your partner and all that, you're happily ever after in this place. And then, so there's this kind of consciousness or soul. Sometimes Ajahn Brahm, when he teaches the word of the Buddha, during the Rains retreat for us, he says, like you could say that it's translated soul. It's wrong translation, but it's just an English word which we use quite often. But consciousnesses is what Ajahn Brahm likes to translate this. Again, there's different kind of consciousnesses. So you cannot say there's the danger there. It's a sort of wrong way of translating the Pali, the vijnana. It's not plural. But he translated as consciousnesses because, again, there's 6 consciousnesses. We have eye consciousness. We see something, and then seeing, there has to be object. You see something, and the consciousness of the eye comes up. Seeing consciousness. One consciousness. Hearing, there has to be a sound. There has to be observer. And then the consciousness of hearing arises. Same with all the other senses, whether it's touch, taste, all the other ones. And your mind consciousness. Mind doesn't appear without having an object. So in Buddhism, we have 6 consciousnesses. So this is really, again, we sort of think it comes like almost like a default mechanism. There must be me somewhere, right? Like we had this our queen's funeral. And people were crying, the queen died and it's sad and this and that. And I was thinking, like, which part of vijnana or which part of all these khandhas is the queen? Where does the queenness appear there? Is the queen any different from us? Her body is, we would say it's made out of the same kind of things. Livers and spleens and eyes and ears and all brains and all that. It's made out of the same kind of things. So do people think that there's some kind of different kind of consciousness of what the queen has? Is the queen's consciousness different from our consciousness? And in Buddhism, we say, we are not different. I'm not any different from you, and you're not any different from me, but we're not the same. We're not different, but we're not the same. You're not any better than I am. You're not any worse than I am. But all those things with the queen, so we give these kind of ideals for the queen. But we do the same thing for us. We exist. That's what we think. Consciousness is there. Which one? Your eye consciousness. When you look at me, and there's the you perceive it, and then it's the consciousness arises. Yes, I can see. Then the hearing comes. You can hear, and all of those different things changes every millisecond, and none of these things are constant. So you don't hear and you don't see at the same time. Here. You don't feel and hear at the same time. You don't taste and hear at the same time. They're all like a flickering. Like when you have the movie roll, when they, the old movies when the cellophane, and then you have individual frames like this. All those individual frames are different. And they are not even connected to each other. There's this little gap between the frames, right? And then the new one arises. And then it changes, and a new one arises. But because it's so quick, because the film is, playing so many frames per second, we perceive that as a constant self. So that, again, constitutes where you think it's self. But there is no one role where we would take now the soul, for example, from what quite often people think there's a soul somewhere there. As if the soul is somehow, we have different film roles, and the soul somehow plays different role altogether. And it's separate from all the others. So we would say there's five senses. That's it. And the sixth sense plays completely different movie set there, or it's separated there, or somehow there's interaction between those movie sets. Maybe the five senses color that the sixth sense. No, it doesn't exist that way in Buddhism, at least. That's what we say. Again, going back to in the beginning, these are not absolute categories. The Buddha said, the Buddha didn't say, but the Buddha used some of the what already existed at the time of the Buddha, and he just reused them. And but these are the strong ideas where we think self exists. And I can see that it's already almost 10 past, and I haven't even started the sutta. So let's see if we can go that far with the sutta. But at least, I'm giving you the category of where self exists, where a lot of us, we think self exists. So I don't think I'm going to read the whole sutta because I don't have time. Okay. I just skipped the beginnings, and I just repeat a couple things which I said from the suttas, and see how we go. Monks, form is not self. For if form were self, it wouldn't lead to affliction. And you could compel thus, you could say thus, may my form be like this, may it not be like that. But because form, the body, see you later, thank you. But because body is not self, it leads to suffering, affliction. And you can't compel body like this. May my body be like this, may it not be like that. Any kind of feeling, perception, choices at all, you cannot say, may my feelings, choices, perceptions be like this, compelled to be like this, or any other way. But because of all of these things don't belong to you, it leads to a suffering. And you cannot compel feeling, perception, will, or choices. May they be like this, may be like that. So again, will or choices, anything. You cannot say, oh, there's suffering now. I don't want to see this suffering in my mind. If you're depressed, can you just say, I don't want to be depressed? If you're sad, if there's suffering in life, can you say, I don't want to be sad? There's a ways to sort of overcome from those things. And quite often the Buddha said, inspiration is one of those things where it actually it lifts you up. And quite often, which I have problem with these modern teachers who teach Buddhism mindfulness, is that a lot of the times what they teach is stress reduction. And why I have a problem with that is that stress reduction is obviously good, but it's almost like you're putting a Band-Aid on a wound. If you come to the Buddhist Society of Victoria and you come for the Theravada teachers, we don't just tell you this is the Band-Aid. We do teach you that If you have suffering in your mind, contemplate these things, try to, how you uplift your mind from this bogland a little bit. But eventually, to deep down, it is all of this is suffering. And this is where and in this end of the sutta, where we come to that, what's really the deep meaning of this. Okay, so we go to the second part of the sutta now. So the Buddha in here, in the beginning of the sutta, I skipped all these. He said, all of these things you cannot just say may be any other way than what it is. May be like this, may be that like that. You cannot say that, whether it's your body, feelings, choices. You should truly see any kind of consciousness, and the other ones, at all, past, future, present, internal, external, coarse or fine, inferior, superior, far or near, all consciousness with right understanding. This is not mine, I am not this is not myself. Actually, I double read it, but I don't think you even noticed that. But now it's actually the second part of the sutta. What do you think, monks? Is form, body, permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, sir. That's the word anicca, quite often said in Buddhism, anicca, impermanent. But if it's impermanent, it is suffering. Or is it suffering or happiness? Suffering, Bhante, sir. But if it's impermanent, suffering, and perishable, meaning bodies will die and get old, sick, and die, is it fit to be regarded thus? This is mine. I am this. This is myself. No, sir. Is feeling permanent or impermanent? Is perception permanent or impermanent? Are choices permanent or impermanent? Is consciousnesses, plural, are they permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, sir. But if it's impermanent, it is suffering. Is it suffering or happiness? Suffering, sir. But if it's impermanent, suffering, and perishable, is it fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, I am this is myself. No, sir. So, you should truly see any kind of form at all, whether it's past, future, or present, internal, external, coarse or fine, inferior, superior, far or near, all form, all bodies, with right understanding. This is not mine, I am not this is not myself. And then the Buddha goes the rest of the other 5. All of these things where when the Buddha says anybody, past, future, present, internal, external, coarse and fine, very typical of how it's taught at that time, very typical of how it's explained in many of the suttas. The Buddha just closed all the loopholes. You could say there's some kind of subtle, maybe not body, but maybe there's some kind of subtle consciousness somewhere there. Maybe it will be superior, like here the Bhante Suchado has translated, I don't have the Pali here, but superior consciousness is somewhere. So quite often the Buddha have all these synonyms, all these things, so sort of almost like closing the loop, so you don't start thinking, well, surely there must be somewhere where there's self. It is somewhere there. So in the suttas, there's a lot of synonyms where and similes, where we sort of almost just close the loophole. There's no self anywhere. There's no subtle consciousness somewhere, which you just cannot perceive where the self exists. Okay, and now this is I'm going pretty well, so I'm going too fast for you, but I'm sorry for that. But now this is almost like the third part of the sutta, where where the Buddha says, then what? Okay, there's no self. Seeing this, a learned noble disciple grows disillusioned with form, feeling, perception, choices, and consciousnesses. Being disillusioned, desires fade away. When desires fade away, they're freed. When they're freed, they know they're freed. So the last part here is that when you see, again, sometimes we say people, you can contemplate these certain things like your death. You can contemplate a little bit of like there's no self, like you intellectually understand it almost. But really, when we use the word here, the seeing, it comes after deep meditation. You can have a little bit of this kind of understanding, so you can remove yourself from that thinking patterns you have, and then the mind comes, calmer and calmer. But you truly don't see what it means not to own these things. There is no driver on the bus. There's just the bus is going the route no matter what you do. There's no, whether you jump, how much you jump up and down. But what happens when you truly understand these things after deep meditation? You grow disillusioned. And the word here is nibbindati. You disillusioned, you turn away from the world. You turn away owning anything. You really, and it's quite interesting here, it's just like, when you okay, I read it again. Being disillusioned, nibbindati, desire fades away. You realize it's not mine, it doesn't belong to me. You grow disillusioned. You just sort of, why am I so worried about these things? It doesn't belong to me. And this is why people just like what's enlightenment and all of these things. It's that they truly are experiences where there's no going back. You completely see there's nowhere there is self anywhere. And this is the first hatching of that little chick, what comes out of it when you become, you are going in the right direction. You understand, and this is why this is the second sutta, what the Buddha taught to his old mates when the Buddha wasn't yet the Buddha. He was actually still, the Buddha was the Buddha when he went back to it, but he was Bodhisattva when he was hanging out with his 5 mates. And then he himself left them, went back to them when he actually got enlightened, set the wheel rolling. And these teachings, we don't know how long they were together, how long these teachings they're going. They were actually, we don't know, but it probably went for days and days and weeks. So this is why this is the second sutta, where actually one of them now, they weren't monks yet, but interesting thing in this sutta, they call them monks, but there was no monkhood, there was no sangha at that time yet. But one of those, these ascetics, which Buddha was striving with, became enlightened. So you see through that, you turn away, you lose any kind of desire for your body, because it doesn't belong to me. It's not like, it's like your car. The car belongs to you. But if it doesn't work one morning, you take it to the service station. You don't have a strong feeling. Perhaps I saw a nice car out there. If I think it's yours, the beautiful black Maserati there. I think you would have a heartache if somebody crashes into the Maserati. But most people don't have that kind of strong owning, caring for that, my car is broken. You're just like, okay, the car doesn't work today, and you take it to the service station. But we have a strong attachment to our body. like something goes wrong, you're worried about it. But once you have this kind of nibbindati, your desire fades away. It's just a vehicle. Our bodies are vehicles which take us through this life, and we put it the right fuel in. That's why you have to learn what fuel goes in. What's the best fuel for your body, and same with whatever all the other senses. We take care of it, and that's why we do things like loving kindness. That's why we meditate. That's why we keep precepts. So we have a clear and a free mind, happy mind, and then hopefully we can have a peaceful mind. But there is no worry anymore for that person who has a deep understanding. There is no worry because you see as the vehicle, your body is your vehicle. And all the other 6 senses. 5 khandhas rather, sorry. So when the desire fades away, they're freed. When they're freed, they know they're freed. So sometimes people ask us, somebody enlightened, do they know they're enlightened? Yes, they know. Anywhere in the sutras, every place the Buddha explains it in these kind of terms. He said, you know you are freed. It's not like you guesstimate. Am I enlightened or not? I'm not sure. I think I had a deep experience. I could be enlightened, but I'm... Well, last week I thought so, but not so much this week. But anyways, there's no turning back. You either have it or you don't. They understand. Rebirth is ended. The spiritual journey has been completed. What had to be done has been done. There's no return to any state of existence. This is what the Buddha said, satisfied the group of 5 monks, were happy with what the Buddha said. And while the discourse was being spoken, the minds of the group of 5 mendicants were freed from defilements by not grasping. Oh, that's right. All of them the rest of them became enlightened. It was a Kondanya who got enlightened on the first one, the turning of the wheel, and then all the other ones. No. Did Kondanya did it become enlightened? He became a stream enter, and now all of them became enlightened when this one. Right. So it's a powerful sutta. Unfortunately, because I read it to you briefly, so you didn't get enlightened. I'm sure otherwise you get pretty deep there. But it's a beautiful sutta, and we have 4 of these suttas we recite throughout the whole every rains retreat for 3 months. And this sutta actually, when Ajahn Brahm went to his 6-month self-retreat, he was in Bodhinyana and staying by himself for 6 months. He said, I didn't take any books with me. I didn't take a lot of suttas. I just took one sutta with me, and it was Anattalakkana Sutta, characteristics of non-self, and he just kept reciting that for 6 months every day, he said, or twice a day, I don't remember what he said now, but it's a very, very strong sutta. And to understand, truly understand, there's no self anywhere. Anatta. Nothing belongs to you in your body, in your mind. And when you come out of deep meditation, I'm sure you all try to put enough effort here and there, and we have a new retreat center coming. Meditate with us, you come on retreats, and all these things, you get brainwashed coming to the Buddhist Society. And you have a deep experience, your mind just leaps towards that. And hopefully you become one of those ones where the peak is coming through the egg. And you're going to be one of those stream mentors. And we need you. So that's the short discourse on the characteristics of non-self, Anattalakkana Sutta. I'll leave you to it, and then if you have any questions, please ask. Thank you. before we go to the questions, maybe just so I said I wanted to mention that since I'm part of the retreat center build-up, and we are slightly behind the schedule. Everybody knows there's the COVID things happening and all those things, but we're still going strong. All the money is being raised for the building part of it. So the actual buildings have been raised. So that was 6.4 million. So well done of us. Now we still have to raise a bit more funds for the furniture, white goods, none of that. So we got the actual construction is paid, so that's amazing. And then builder is now saying that there is some other expenditure coming from the build. Everything is more expensive now. So, but we keep you updated. So keep looking at our website, and we tell you all those things. But we're still going strong, and I think it's going to be really nice for the Buddhist Society. We're going to have a retreat, and so I'm very happy to be, that we're going well. So let's go to the questions.
Thank you, Bhante, for the teaching. Look, I'm asking you this because I get asked it a bit. Okay, so there's this Buddhist concept of non-self.
Yeah.
So what is reborn?
What's reborn?
Why is this concept of rebirth in Buddhism if there's no self? I get asked it. I find it difficult to, particularly, to reply to friends who are just interested.
Yeah. It's one of those things like, I find the loophole. They're like, oh, yeah, you're teaching this. But, well, look, if you want to sit down, but there is no easy answers. And it's a very common question. And I kept asking that same question from teachers. And they don't have good answers, unfortunately. Okay, so there's certain similes where we give. One of the Buddhist similes is that when there's a candle depends on the heat, it depends on the wick, and it depends on the wax. And there's a candle going out. There was a story of novice who saw there was a candle just about going out because of the candles. And then they came with the new candle and light up the candle from the old one and put the new candle on top of it, so it snuffed out the old one. What gets transferred? There's a bit of a cop-out because we don't have good answers. So what gets transferred from the old candle into the new candle? There's nothing really gets transferred. I mean, obviously it's the heat, but between the new candle and the old candle, there is no transaction really going. Another simile for this is more enlightened, but you can use it for what goes from life to life, is when there is a candle again. And candle goes out, wind comes and blows out the candle. Where did the flame go? Did the flame go north, west, south, east, up, down? And the Buddha said, that's a stupid question. You cannot ask that kind of question. Where does the flame go when it goes out? But that's when you get enlightened. Enlightened, there is no flame going anywhere. But I'm just saying that because of the candle simile. But there is something going from life to next life, right? And that's there's no self. What gets reborn? Nobody. But there's something there. And if you read these stories about children who remember their past lives, for example, I really like those stories because they're so convincing, and there's like children don't make up things, and then they have been able to verify those things. They even say that your body quite often looks the same the next life. There's similarities in your body. Certain cultures, for example, they do a mark on the dead body, and then they try to find these children who gets born, and that there was a marking up. We put a mark there. Or there's just like I know in Alaska, they have sort of the people, the Inuits there, some of the tribes believe in rebirth, and there's somebody got speared and they died because the spear was, and then somebody gets reborn and they have a mark on the stomach, and it's like, oh, that's the boy's grandfather who got died 50 years ago, and there was still the marking, so the body has a scar with it. So there is certain kind of image what gets reborn. Unfortunately, I cannot say a soul gets reborn. Because, there is no soul in Buddhism. There is no, like I said, how many consciousness? We have 6 consciousnesses. In Buddhism, we believe that there's a causes and conditions. Causes and conditions make up your karma, per se. Your karma is like a river. Again, going into silly similes, but that's the best we have. We think we have free will, choices, sankhara, right? What Ajahn Brahm says will, Bhikkhu Bodhi says volition, and Ajahn Bhante Mudito here says choices. That's why we think Ajahn Brahm says will belongs to us. It doesn't, because your karma, that's why we have the simile of the river. You are flowing along and we say, this is my name. That's a river, that's a Yarra River here. We give it a name because it's here, we know it's there, and it has a water, it flows. But it doesn't flow just anywhere. It doesn't all of a sudden change its direction. You don't stop being you, right? Every morning you wake up, you're you. And from year to year since childhood, there seems to be you there. You were a little girl, you were very different, but there was something I could recognize, that's me, ever since I was being a child. That's your river, and that's your name. What is your karma? Your karma is like the banks around the river, which gives you the direction. You think you have a choice, will, volition. You choose, I'm doing this. I went to this work. I chose this partner. I choose to live here, eat this. Perhaps there's a little notch there, this and that, but it's mostly come from your karma and the external forces which give you the shape. You give it the name, you're not in control. There's nobody in the bus. Going back to what gets reborn. Is there a river somewhere? Stream of consciousnesses? What? I consciousness gets born somewhere? Maybe there is a mind consciousness somewhere. Why it cannot be mind consciousness? Because mind consciousness depends on what comes to the mind. The Buddha gave a simile of they made roofs out of thatched. What's the word? Thatched roofs. So there's like 2 reefs together. And if something comes to the mind, into the mind appears because of that. It depends on, let's say, this side, left hand. It's your hearing. And it's so quickly. It's hearing, seeing, sensing. Mind. Mind comes. Let's say the hearing now. The mind appears. So what do you call this then? Hearing consciousness. Hearing consciousness. This disappears. Nothing else comes. Does this appear? No. That's why they say it's like the roof. It falls away. Without anything comes. But you know what? There's always a new one coming. What's going to come then? Hearing. Or mind. Your thinking, let's say. Your thinking comes. And then that appears again. And then you call the right hand what the left brought to it. What gets reborn? I'm just going in circles and you're just getting more frustrated. Just tell me what gets reborn. Can I say what I see? Okay. I really tried to tell you now. It's your craving. It's you want to be. So the flame, when you die, you start the perceptions, all of those things, they don't just disappear. The mind takes another shape. It takes a shape of mind-made body. That's what we say, mind-made body. When they say that, I've heard stories, people when they're dying, the mind starts separating and it takes a shape of your body. So you still see yourself as your body. It's a mind-made body. There's no physical body. But it can still hear, it can still see, you're still thinking. But what takes that is that because you want to be. That's what we call craving. So the want the greed goes from life to life. And that's why, let's say, why would anybody become a ghost? Why do we have ghosts? If you believe in ghosts, there's a lot of Asians too. It's because you have so much attachment, craving to this life. So now it's your turn. Tell me. You tell me.
What I said.
Yeah.
Out of ignorance, I guess. But I said
maybe take the mic so everybody online can hear you.
And this is to a friend, and I said, well, it's very hard to understand, but it's, as I understand, it's like the vibrations of the mind. Something of the mind goes on, and that would be caused by craving.
Which part of the mind is it?
Yeah, I know. No,
I know.
Answer that.
But so that's why it's like.
But that's what I said.
Yeah, sure, and and that's what I would have said as well. And. Sometimes we do.
It's very hard to friends because they're bright and they question.
Yeah, but there is something which gets reborn, and something, it's the sort of easy part of it. Like, okay, well, baby comes to be, and the consciousness comes, but the consciousness comes from somewhere into the vessel, into the body, which I find troubling to understand. What do they? The other religions believe that the mind and body are the same, or are they not the same? And is it the tabula rasa, empty mind somehow, and it constitutes? But
well, if you're explaining to someone who's Catholic and they have such a strong idea of the soul, it's very hard.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll tell you another thing. Thank you. It's a good question, very common question, and we don't have good answers. No, that's okay. I tell you, I do like a lot about evolution. In Buddhism, we believe in evolution. How long humans have existed? They said Homo sapiens came about 300,000 years ago. About 100,000 years ago, our brains became the size we are now. Are we the brain? No, we're not the brain. But, you would maybe think about 100,000 years ago, we as humans existed as we exist now, right? Give or take. Before that, did they have consciousnesses like we have now? Perhaps not. In 100,000 years, 300,000 years, 1 million years, will there be similar kind of consciousness we have now? Amoebas came about, 3.5 billion years ago? Is it that long? I don't remember. Something like that. And us humans just came on this little fraction of what their life has been in Earth. You cannot say these microorganisms, which they can find in the rocks, the bacteria, have any kind of consciousness. They have bodies, but they don't sort of see themselves as, somehow. They don't understand what that is. Who is there to say that this is the peak of consciousnesses, of humanity as it is? What got reborn earlier, it gets reborn in 1,000 years from now, 100,000 years ago. Will it be the same? Are we the peak of evolution? We're not. And the same way, why sometimes what gets asked, well, Buddhism came to be 2,500 years ago, 2,600 something now. Why did it come about then? Why did the Buddha appear? Why did somebody who was searching for this truth appear 2,500 years ago? Why didn't it appear our time? Maybe it was the first time in human evolution when it was possible that somebody could actually think outside a box per se, and then start going for the search. There's other reason perhaps. Maybe the society was ready. They fed there was sort of a quest. There was a lot of people like different philosophies and all that. They were really looking, what's the meaning of all of this? And they fed these people, and there were a lot of debates, and they appreciated them. So maybe that was one of the reasons. But perhaps one of the reasons is human evolution. We weren't able to think the way we do now. But don't think this is the peak of humanity. Evolution keeps going. We are now starting to merge with technology. But all of these things will still continue. There will be still craving. There still will be volition, will, choices. There still will be different kind of consciousnesses. Perhaps they will be different than what we have now. Maybe we'll get one more consciousness. Maybe we get the artificial consciousness which feed into our mind. But I find it really liberating. All of these things, they just keep rolling and rolling, and we get reborn. What gets reborn? There's no easy answer, yeah. But, yeah. Okay, I think we just have to have one quick question from Dhamma. Yeah.
Are there any more questions from the room? Okay, so we have a somewhat unrelated question, but dear Ajahn, what should we do with anxiety and fear of mind, especially when being alone and not busy doing things? The mind gets occupied with negative thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, so these are the band-aids we put on and you have to do this. We all suffer. The suffering is true, and we try to recognize what's causing it. Why? What do you? Sometimes we say you can name it. Sometimes we say recognize where it exists in your body. Quite often we have when you have worry or you have anxiety, it exists somewhere in your body. And actually recognize what do you do when this feeling appears in your mind, and start recognize it in your body. Quite often we worry with your stomach, our stomachs, or jaws. You grind your teeth, or on your shoulders you hunch your shoulders. To see that it's something. It was like something is showing me I have this feeling coming up again. You recognize it, but if you don't really learn to recognize, you don't learn how to do anything with it. But big thing on that step is actually recognizing it. Then you know what to do with it. It's quite often, we just say, be kind towards it, and actually relax it physically, learn what helps it. But once you actually learn to recognize, that's a big step. That's what I would say. Learn to recognize those feelings. Rest is sort of follows from there. But don't think, it doesn't belong to you, it's not mine, it doesn't really help, perhaps. These are the deep meditations, and we have to sort of brainwash up thinking into these. When we have deep meditation, we come out of it. But even if you can say all day that it doesn't belong to me, it doesn't help. You just have to learn to recognize and be kind towards it. There's not much you can do about it in reality. But if you keep meditating, it does get easier. So that's why it is. The tendency is to push it away, whether it's daydreaming or distract yourself with online and any other means. But we try not to, once in a while, take a time and just stick with it. The Buddha said one time, it's interesting, is one sutta, he said, when I saw fear coming, I just sat as long as the fear subsided. He just didn't give up. But I mean, that was Buddha. He had very good mind. But there's something to that. Sometimes you say, I'm just going to look at it. No, it's just 5 minutes. I'm going to look at it now. That's it. And then afterward, go and distract yourself. But if you don't, once in a while, if you just don't hold up and don't do anything, don't try to change it, you never learn to recognize it. Sometimes just look at it for a while. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not going to kill you or don't be afraid of it too much. So, yeah, be with it. Very good. Okay, it's 45. I think we can go because we have the lunch coming. So it was nice to be here. It's nice to. The rains continue, so we'll see you. Hopefully, most of you, the end of the rains ceremony in Newby. I see you there. Thank you so much. Sukhiyat.
Thank you, Ajahn. BSV relies on BSV has operating expenses like electricity bills, water bills, and rates and things like that, and we rely on donations. So if we could support to help BSV cover some of the operational costs, the donation box is at the back, so you could might like to contribute towards some of the expenses there. We have updated the notice board that shows the weekly expenses to see how much we actually cost us to run the place. We need to continue running your support will help us to continue run the place to provide teaching to our community as well as supporters, our learners or people who like to learn Buddhism all around the world too as well. So your contributions towards the support of the operation of this center will really help to bring Dhamma to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Okay, let's pay respect to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavansang Abhivadana Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhamman Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami